Good morning. All right. It didn't have noise to it. I know, there's no sound. There was no sound to that video. I didn't realize that. Good morning. See, you can hear me. There is sound. So hey Jazznaz, Jinx, we've got Roxana. Welcome everybody. Yeah, I'm gonna have to add sound to that video. It sounds weird with no sound. It sounds weird. It feels weird with no sound. So I'm going to be reading from the book here, story time. I don't remember where we left off because it's been a while. So I'm just going to go ahead and I have it chaptered, like I have a bookmark in here. So I'm assuming we left off at on page, oh, what's this? What's happening? Oh, I took the sticker part off. Why did I do that? Past Becca, why did you do that? I put the sticker in the book and I actually took the backing off of the sticker. I don't know why I did that. I'm glad it didn't ruin the book. Anyway, so I'm on page 97, chapter 20. So I don't know if anybody bought the book and is reading along with me, which you are more than welcome to do. I actually suggest everybody buy this book. But it's Anatomy of a False Confession, The Interrogation and Conviction of Brendan Dassey by Michael Cincinnati. I suggest everybody go out and buy this book. It is, so far, this has been an amazing book. The chapters are short, very easy read. And it's very interesting, his perspective, because he's a professional defense attorney. That was his job before he retired, I guess, and wrote this book. I think he might have written other books I'm going to look into. Oh, see on the back here, even Richard A. Leo, author, Police Interrogation and American Justice, even gave a nod to this book on the back of it, saying Michael D. Cincinnati has written a wonderfully descriptive and insightful book. The definitive account of interrogations of Brendan Dassey and his coerced, contaminated, and almost certainly false confessions. Cincinnati masterfully describes the tricks of the interrogation trade, how police investigators have adapted to the theoretical Miranda precautions and turned them to their advantage, and more importantly, how and why police interrogation strategies can, and sometimes do, lead to false confessions from the innocent. Anyone who watched the Netflix series Making a Murder with rapt fascination will want to read this book. Maybe. I don't know, maybe he'll join the team, Jinx. So, like I said, we're on page 97, chapter 20, pulling the rug from under. So I'm going to read, and I'll pause and look up. Like I said, each chapter is literally like 2 or 3 pages long. Like, it's not that big of a book at all. So I'll probably read, and then I'll look up to the chat when I'm done and see if there's any questions. There's a bunch of pictures here that he has that I will show you guys. All right. In the next chapter. All right, so Wiegert and Fassbender's promises of leniency, which were conditioned upon Dassey telling them what they wanted to hear, were reinforced by investigators' repeated assurances that they already knew everything Brendan had supposedly done. These assurances, in turn, indicated that nothing Brendan said could shock them into regating on their promises, giving him carte blanche. I forget what that word means. I think it means open menu. To say the worst things he could think of, as he tried to satisfy his interrogators. There could be no doubt that Brendan thought he had been offered a virtual get-out-of-free-jail card. And Dassey tried to use this card after he agreed that he had committed 3 very serious crimes, including the murder, good morning, Carol, the murder of Teresa Halbach. He could have confessed to anything the interrogators asked of him, but these crimes were more than enough, even for Wiegert and Fassbender. And now that Dassey had performed his side of the bargain, it was time for the interrogators to hold up their end of the deal. Near the end of their 4th interrogation, their exchange went as following. Brendan, how long is this going to take? Wiegert, it shouldn't take a whole lot longer. Brendan, do you think I could get back to school before 1:29? Wiegert, probably not. Brendan, oh. Wiegert, what's that 1:29? Brendan, well, I have a project due in 6 hours. Wiegert, okay, well, we'll worry about that later, okay? Even though Dassey gave them the confession they relentlessly demanded, the interrogators weren't taking him back to school, and, in fact, Fassbender was far from done. He needed to tie up a few loose ends of the story that they fed to Dassey. We think you're doing pretty good so far, but there's some areas that we have to revisit, okay? And then some other questions. And he couldn't help but trot out their tired mantra about how they already knew the truth and how Dassey should just agree with them. And again, don't make us work so hard for this. Just get the truth out right away. Because again, we have a pretty good knowledge of what happened there. And they had done throughout the interrogation. They would ask a question. Dassey would give an answer they didn't like, and they insist on truth and honesty. Then Dassey would say exactly what they had asked him to say. But the interrogators would realize that their story really didn't make sense after all. So they would scold Dassey as if he, rather than they, had provided the details that suddenly displeased them. Their final bit of nonsensical, wheel-spinning dialogue included the following exchange. Fassbender, what happened to Teresa's other personal effects? I mean, a woman usually has a purse, right? Tell us what happened to that. Brendan, I don't know what happened to it. Fassbender, what happened to her cell phone? Don't try to think of something. Just, Brendan, I don't know. Fassbender, did Stephen tell you what he did with those things? Brendan, no. Fassbender, I need you to tell us the truth. Brendan, yeah. Fassbender, what did he do with her possessions? Brendan, I don't know. Brendan clearly said he didn't know 4 times, and Fassbender even paid lip service to the idea that Dassey shouldn't just make up an answer if he didn't know. But just like the person who says, don't get me anything for my birthday, but then expects a present, Fassbender kept pressing and pressing for the answer he claimed not to want. And then Wiegert jumped into the mix with a now familiar demand of honesty, and the 2 interrogators got their prize. Sort of. Wiegert, Brendan, it's really important that you continue being honest with us, okay? Don't start lying now. The hard part is over. Do you know what happened to those items? Brendan, he burnt them. Wiegert, how do you know? Brendan, because when I passed it there was like a purse in there and stuff. Wiegert, what else was in there? Brendan, like garbage bags, some. Wiegert, tell me what you saw in there exactly. Brendan, like they were buried underneath a garbage bag that was. Wiegert, how do you know? How could you see them if they were underneath the garbage? I'm going to pause right here and I'm going to say real quickly that so during this bonfire that happened with Brendan and Stephen, it's pretty known that Stephen was burning women's clothing and stuff like that, and it was confirmed, or Stephen said it was Jody's stuff. he was burning some of Jody's clothes. I think he was burning the stuff he didn't like her to wear. Because if you listen to phone calls and stuff through Stephen and Jody, well, they were each in prison, like when Jody was in prison and then when Stephen was in prison. So we have those phone calls, and you could tell that they had a very unstable relationship, and Stephen didn't really like the way she dressed because to him it was too provocative to dress, certain ways. So he probably was burning Jody's clothes, and Brendan probably did see clothes in that bonfire that he saw. So I think a part of what he's bringing up, so he doesn't know what happened to Teresa's stuff, obviously, but if he had to guess, it would be with the clothes that he did see, sort of thing. You know what I'm saying? I personally don't believe there was a fire on October 31st. I'm just going to put that out there. I think he's taking back from a memory of another bonfire that happened either before or after the 31st. That's just my opinion. But I think a lot of what Brendan is taking from in his memories is from things that he's experienced in the last couple of months leading up to this event, and he's trying to fit the pieces into this puzzle that the interrogators are putting in front of him. So he's recalling from older memories, if you understand what I'm trying to say. So that's why I think he did see clothes in a bonfire, but I don't think obviously it wasn't Teresa's, because Teresa's Teresa, I mean, we all have, a lot of us have the belief that Teresa wasn't murdered on the property or anything like that. So I'm going to go back to reading now. Good question, Mark. Eventually, however, the interrogators had to wrap things up. All good things, as they say, must end, and it was now time to let Dassey know that they had not been acting as his father, and they're not going to stand behind him, and they never had any intention of going to bat for him. Instead, they had bad intentions from the get-go. Fassbender broke the news to Dassey this way. Obviously we're police officers, okay? And because of that, you told us we're going to have to arrest you. Did you kind of figure that was coming? Or for what you did, we can't let you go right now. The law won't let us, and we're going to be able to go. And you're not going to be able to go home tonight, all right? Did you kind of, to be honest, after telling us what you told us, you kind of figured this was coming, yeah? This is the March 1st interrogation, and he hasn't been home since. One has to wonder how Wiegert and Fassbender felt about yanking the rug from under the stunned child, the child who, at their urging, trusted them and believed that they were going to look out for his interests. Based on the interrogator's behavior up to this point, one can't help but think that, at least on some level, they might have enjoyed lowering the broom on the kid. Putting another way, they had repeatedly tricked, psychologically manipulated, and blatantly lied to the child. And they did all of this, apparently, without any misgivings. From there, it's not a big leap to think that they could have gotten a charge out of telling Dassey that he had been dubbed. Sure, they were two grown men, and Dassey was a 16-year-old kid with learning disabilities, and admittedly they needed 4 cracks at him to get what they wanted, but a win is still a win. To use an analogy, it's probably at least a little fun for a professional tennis player to hit an ace against a movie star in a charity tennis match. An ace is still an ace. But if Wiegert and Fassbender did enjoy it, they were careful not to rub Dassey's face in their triumph. Not only did they think that they would need him to testify against Avery down the road, but they also wanted more out of him that very day. So rather than doing a victory dance, Fassbender kept the lie and promises flowing. Your cooperation and help with us is going to work in your favor. I can't say what's going to do or where you're going to end up, But it's going to work in your favor, and we appreciate your continued cooperation. Going out to the house and going in the house and getting a few things, and what about you going there with us and pointing out those areas that we wanted you to point out? Is that all right? Do you know where those shoes are that you're wearing that day? The red shoes? What about the jacket? But as bad as this was for Dassey, it wasn't the biggest rug yanking he would experience in this case. Sure, the cops said that they were on his side when they were really working against him, but an even bigger surprise would await him when he met his attorney, Led Kaczynski, who really was, at least legally speaking, on Dassey's side. The bizarre relationship was subject of Chapter 22. But first, the next chapter moves us out of the interrogation room and into the trial preparation mode. It's time for Ken Kratz to take Dassey's confession to the media. Warning, things are about to get sweaty. So that's the end of this chapter. The next is part, what is that, 4? 3? Trials, Tribulations, and Appeals. Chapter 21, page 103. Poisoning the jury pool. Once Wiegert and Fassbender extracted a confession from Dassey, prosecutor Ken Kratz and his team had to think about how to present that piece of evidence at Dassey's jury trial. The presentation was going to be incredibly important, as the state didn't have an eyewitness or any physical evidence linking Dassey to their crimes. Just as the interrogators had tactics to get to confessions, prosecutors have tactics to win jury trials. One of their ticket is to start trying the case to the potential jurors before trial during the jury selection process known as voir dire. Voir dire, I believe Foul Play has the manuscript to that particular trial. If you guys want to check it out, go to Foul Play. I did a couple of voices for that too in that one. So if you guys, I know they have it. It's very fascinating. This whole process, by the way, from the interrogation to pre-trial stuff to the actual trial to after trial stuff, all been a learning experience for me. I had no idea how complicated and how much actually goes into this, because when you look at it on TV or on the news or whatever, they don't actually dissect it like this one. I never heard of a voir dire, I believe it's how it's called, voir dire. So, like I said, it's very interesting. Let me actually, dire definition. A preliminary examination of witness or a jury by judge or counsel. So that's technically what that means. And like I said, Foul Play has it on the channel if you guys want to check out Brendan's voir dire. Am I saying it right? Voir dire. Voir dire. Voir dire. Voir dire. I was saying it wrong. Voir dire. Alright, so anyway, yeah, you guys should check that out. It's definitely interesting. This allows the prosecutor to start indoctrinating the jurors early, thus increasing the odds of a conviction. But if early is better, then why not start? Oh, sorry, I keep yawning. They say taking deep breaths will stop it. All right. But if earlier is better, then why not start sooner than that? Why not try the case in the media, long before the would-be jurors are even assembled in the courthouse? If the prosecutor can convince the general public of Dassey's guilt, and if the eventual jurors will be drawn from the general public, then the state can win its case before anyone steps foot in the courtroom. I am going to stop here and say this is why people like Nancy Grace are so dangerous to cases, because Nancy Grace does the same thing. I know people enjoy true crime, they enjoy watching all the stuff and like everything, but the problem is when you have somebody of high influence stand up and present things that should be waited until court and gets the people riled up, then it taints the jury pool. Everybody in this country is entitled to a fair trial, whether you think they're guilty or innocent. Whether this person is Hitler, everybody in this country is entitled to a fair trial. And when you have the media, and you do trial by media, like what Ken Kratz did, which we're going to talk more about in this, or like what Nancy Grace does every day, you don't have a fair trial after that, because the general public, it's hard to find a jury pool that's going to listen to the case and listen to just the facts and then make a ruling. It's very hard. And that's why, like I said, people like Nancy Grace, in my opinion, are dangerous. And like, look at Casey Anthony. Did Casey Anthony have a fair trial? I don't know. I have to look more into it. But I can tell you this. If it wasn't for people like Nancy Grace who put pressure, who put out there to the media, and who people were listening to, right? And then they in turn put pressure on the state of Florida and the prosecutors, who then felt like they needed to rush the trial, right? Then maybe Casey Anthony would have been prosecuted and would be in jail still. Do we all think that? A lot of people have their opinions now on Casey Anthony because of that new documentary. I'm not here to discuss whether she's innocent or guilty. I'm just saying that if it wasn't for people like Nancy Grace, there would have been a different outcome, I believe, for that. And you know what I mean? And because also, like, let's say Casey Anthony didn't do the crime, right? Let's just say she is innocent. It's still put out there in the media that she was guilty, and she still had that trial by media, and she was labeled as guilty. So, like, let's say she is innocent. Now she's out there, and the whole entire, thinks she's guilty. Same thing with Stephen and Brendan. She did the same thing to Stephen and Brendan. What do you think about Brian Kohlberger? Will he get a fair trial? Not that there's so much in the media. That's what I'm saying. Will he get a fair? I've been hearing from a few people, like Kathleen Zellner and even Dr. Silkman and Jay Jax mentioned this during one of the lives. They said that the police, they feel like, in their opinions, and I take Kathleen Zellner a little bit more because she's more of the professional, but I do respect Jay Jax and Dr. Silkman's opinion. So don't think I don't. But I do take an actual lawyer's opinion. And so far they're saying that the police and the investigators of that Ohio 4 are doing everything by the books, and that it seems like they're doing everything correctly on their end. Now, you've got somebody like Nancy Grace, who set up her freaking table in front of the house that they were murdered in, and is reporting on that, which, by the way, that's gawky. I don't care. It's gawky the way she's handling it. It's to me, that's very unprofessional. Like, why do you need to do that? That's just like it making it into a sideshow. People were murdered there. People died there. People lost their children there. You know what I'm saying? Having a table up there and then broadcasting it like, oh, like, look at me, look at where I'm at. I'm in front of the house where people lost their daughters and their son, you know, their children. Those were kids, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, they were adultish. I think they were 21, but like, I don't know. I'm old, so everybody's a kid under the age of 25. But yeah, they lost their kids, and Nancy Grace is, like what Jinx is saying, is disgraceful. It's very disgraceful and tacky, and Nancy Grace should know better. But like I was saying, you know, she's basically giving him a trial by media. So will he get a fair chance at a trial? Will they be able to find jury for the people to rule on? And to actually sit there and listen to the evidence non-subjectively, because that's the whole point of it. The whole point is that we should be sitting there non-subjectively listening to this evidence, not saying, well, Nancy Grace thinks he's guilty, and my neighbor said that they saw him, and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. It's just, you know, it's the same thing with Steven. Steven didn't have a fair trial, did he? Because he walked in and was guilty right off the bat. Everybody was like, he's guilty. Everybody in that town, he's guilty. He did it. You know? So that's just my opinion. I don't think Brian Kohlberger, at least by the media and what the jury could potentially show for him, I don't know if he'd get a fair trial. But like I said, so far, the police, I've heard that the police and the investigators are doing everything correctly, because that's the other thing is that, let's say, for instance, Stephen, I don't believe Stephen Avery did this crime, obviously, but let's say, for instance, he did do this crime. Let's say he did really kill Teresa Hallback. If you have a police station that's willing to, and obviously all the evidence was manipulated and poisoned, and Brendan was made to give this coerced confession, and blah blah blah, all these things, right? If you do all these shady things just to get somebody who may be guilty put into prison, then you're actually risking him to be exonerated and taken out of prison and put back into general public. That's why it's important that the police and the investigators do their job correctly, because let's say Stephen was guilty and you have all this evidence that it's obviously corrupted and coerced and manipulated, and just so you can get him into prison and then he gets out, that's not good. That defeats the purpose. But if you did your job correctly and the person goes to prison, then they're there. But I'm sorry, if you don't have the proper evidence and you don't have anything to show that he committed the murder, then is it fair just to manipulate stuff to make it look like he did it? No. So that's my, like I said, disclaimer, obviously I believe Stephen is innocent, so I'm just saying, though, using that as an example, like with this Brian guy, if he really is, and I'm very firm believer in innocent until proven guilty, so I that's why I say, if he really did kill these people and they have all the proper evidence, then, you know, let it show in court, let him, you know, but If he didn't, then if you don't have the proper proof to show that he did it and proper evidence, then does somebody really deserve to go to prison because they don't have the evidence? You can't just throw somebody in prison on a suspicion or a gut feeling, right? Anyway, that went all over the place. But yeah, I do think that there should be some sort of regulations as far as what the police will share with the public, as far as, like, do we need to know every single detail of these murders right now? No, we don't. Do we need to know any of the evidence that they have against Brian? Not really. Not right now. Maybe after everything's all said and done, then they can release that stuff. Like, I'm not saying there should be a total blackout. We should have the right to be able to see these things. But I think before somebody goes to trial, there should be some sort of standard where you're not allowed to be a Nancy Grace about it. Because I do think that Nancy Grace is part of the problem. And I do think also that a lot of these true crime people on YouTube, like, there's a lot of people that report on these cases. It's becoming a real issue in a lot of these, because even recently there was during the Ohio 4, I believe the police were actually looking into arresting a few people because they were interfering with the case and causing kind of a hysteria against the surviving roommates. We don't know the full story, but people are just putting stuff out there, and it's really affecting those poor girls' lives. So I don't agree with their role in things, but that doesn't mean that they're guilty, and that doesn't mean that their lives. Idaho. Did I say Ohio? What? Did I say Ohio? I get those two states mixed up. Anyway, I got distracted. My thought was kind of. I probably did. I get those two states all mixed up all the time, Jinx. But anyway. Yeah, so there's definitely, and I think a lot of people think that because, like, when the documentary Don't F with Cats, and then you've got a whole bunch of other stuff where you see all these internet sleuths, and then you see people like Jinx, for instance, with the whole Tiger King and Ripper Jack Media. But the difference is that those people were researching. They weren't putting out their stuff on YouTube that would be detrimental to the case or to innocent people. There is a difference between what I would consider a professional internet sleuther like Jinx. Wave to everybody, Jinx. And somebody who just wants to get views on YouTube for posting stuff that can really be detrimental and harmful to the case that they're supposedly working on, and to family members and victims and all sorts of stuff. Like, you're not waving, Jinx. Wave to the people, Jinx. Anyway, now she's shy. She probably ran away. She's like, oh God, she mentioned my name. Anyway. But that's my. I think I got on a soapbox there for a minute there. I normally try not to share my opinion on. I had someone call me. Convenient excuse, Jinx. I said, you're a professional researcher. And there's a difference between a professional researcher and somebody who just, hey, behind the magic, somebody who just has a YouTube channel and they try to get, sorry, my phone's also blowing up. I'm not professional. Yeah, you are. Shut up. She's on Dateline. I'm just a gager. She was on Dateline. Don't let her. Don't let her. Anyway, that's my opinion, though. But yeah. Anyway, back to I don't care. Yeah, see, that's exactly what I mean, Jinx. You don't care about the clicks. You don't care about the views. You just care about the facts, and that's the difference. You don't just go out there and, you know, broadcast anything you hear. You vet the information, and you make sure that it is correct. And even there's some information, I'm not going to say what or what's going on or anything like that, but even when you find out certain information that, you know, it's like, is this useful for the case, or is this just going to ruin another person's life? She actually doesn't just put it out there. You know what I mean? Because it's like, does it help the case, or does it just hurt another person? So that to me is for a professional sleuth, or somebody like that. Unlike a lot of these people who just was like, oh, I found out something and I'm going to make a YouTube video on it and put it out there. And I don't care if it hurts the case or ruins a person's life or whatever. You know what I mean? You know, the people in Don't Fuck with Cats weren't YouTubers that just put out shit to try to make themselves look better. Those people had a small group of people that they trusted, that they shared information with and bounced. Yeah. It's Ryan Hellgas. But again, my opinion is just based on research. Exactly. Right. Your opinions are based on research and actually vetting information. They're not just something that, whatever. But yeah, the Don't Fuck with Cats people, they actually have like this group where they bounced information and they helped each other. All that you saw that them talk about outside of that was after the fact, when it was all said and done. So yeah, she had, that's a if you guys want to listen to some really interesting Making a Murderer, she has her Riddle Me This, Ryan Hellgas, where she basically breaks down everything that shows how she thinks that Ryan Hellgas committed the murder. I personally think that it was Ryan Hellgas too. But I understand where Zellner's going in her stuff, but that, yeah, hey, True Crime of Sunshine, I loved it too. But that's what I mean. It was inspiring because you can see how those people were in my, like with Jinx and Ripperjack Media, those people were what I would consider professional sleuthers, because like I said, they didn't just put out this information in a YouTube video that they found and try to just to do with the clicks and the views and popularity, and they didn't set up GoFundMe's or fundraisers off of victims' names. They didn't, you know what I mean? They kept their information in a tight group amongst themselves. Yes, they would share between each other and bounce ideas and research and all that. And that's also kind of how foul play operates too, my personal opinion. You know, there's a lot of stuff that they could put out that could bring views, but is it helpful or will it hurt the case? You understand? You see what I'm saying? Like that's where I think a true sleuther, researcher, whatever comes in. And there's a lot of people on YouTube that are they're just here to make money off of a lot of these victims and cases names. And you know, I don't you know, do what you got to do in life to survive. But all I can say is that what you put out there energy-wise will come back to you. So that's all I have to say. Anyway, back to the book. Now that I'm done ranting about a subject, about the media and trial by media, I'll get back to this chapter. Yes, don't forget to like the video. Thank you. Oh, speaking of clicks and likes, yeah, I would love if this channel got 1,000 subs on it. Not that it really matters, I guess, because I'm never going to. Hold on. I would never. What is that? Oh, that's my thing. I would never. What's it called? Monetize this channel. I would never do that because the money would go to Brendan anyway. And to me, there's no reason to monetize it. Like, if this channel got monetized, then all the donations that I would get to it would just go to Brendan. So it's not that I'm against monetization, but I don't want YouTube. YouTube takes a lot of the cut from monetizations, and so that's why I always tell people, if you want to donate to Brendan, you know, you can send it to him directly. You could PayPal his mom. You could even PayPal me, and he'll get 100% of that money. So, but this channel isn't really about views or clicks either. And I'm just here to try to help people learn about Brendan, his case, what we can do to help him. That's my main goal on this channel. There we go. I got this new arm from my phone, and I'm still learning how it works, and you still have to tighten it up in certain places. Anyway, there we go. Okay. So it kind of fell off on me while, oh, what's that? Anyway, I won't touch it anymore. Back to the book. All right, so yes, exactly, Jaznaz. I just want to educate people. You know, there's you see it in the news all the time, and I want people to realize that not everything you see on the news is also correct, that there's a lot more to the story than what you see in the media. And next time, my goal is that next time you see some like recently in my local area, a 16-year-old boy was arrested for murder. And my hope is that whenever the general public sees something like that, they pay attention to that kid and what's going on with them, and that we, the people, hold our local authorities and agencies accountable for how they treat children in this. And I don't know beyond what like with this kid recently in my own little area, I don't know what I can do to help this kid other than just be aware that he's in the system and try to educate people, like, you shouldn't, because the kid's going to be held as an adult, and I think that's wrong. I don't know. I think that there should be something more us citizens can do. And I'm still trying to figure that part out. But I want people to be aware that of Brendan's, you know, like Melissa Kaluzinski, like Charlie Erickson, like all these younger people who get arrested for these horrific crimes, and then, you know. Any news on Raleigh this year? I have not heard anything. I'm still I don't know if the family is going to be planning on doing a rally. I think if I personally do a rally, it's just going to be Madison. Just because of time and work schedule and money. Like, I don't know if I could be out there for a full week like I did last time. I think I would just concentrate on Madison in front of Governor Evers' office, but I don't, on like a Thursday or a Friday. I don't know. I have asked the Carla and Barb, and they haven't really thought about Raleigh yet, so I don't know. I guess we're just waiting to see if there's an official rally planner picked this year. Yeah, we can do, yeah, Josh Call. We can do Josh Call. I believe they're in, I think he's like right across the street, actually, from the Capitol building, so it wouldn't be that hard to do. We could do Josh Call's office. I think we could do 2 locations if they're right across the street from each other. You know what I'm saying? Like, have one half of the people stand on one side, the other half of the people stand on the other. That's something we can consider doing. But that's my thoughts so far on rally information. I'll let you guys know the more I know. This year is going to be a very different year for me. There's a lot of things happening in my personal life this year that kind of take a priority. Yes, he did work for the DOJ. You're right. But we'll see what happens. It's still, 6 months away from now? I don't know. Maybe I'll go out there September. Yeah. Yeah, I have, like, my niece is having open heart surgery this year. My sister is getting married. I am going, there's a comic anime convention happening in May that I'm gonna go to. So if I do a rally this year, it might be a little bit later in the year than June or July. I don't know, because a lot of it also depends on how my niece's heart surgery goes. So if I think it's going to go fine, but I don't really feel comfortable leaving the state if something goes wrong this year. Because if something goes wrong, I want to be super available, if you guys know what I mean. So, and like I said, my sister's wedding is in December, so I gotta save up for that, because I think she wants me to be a bridesmaid, so I have to save up for the dress, and yeah. And the anime convention, I'm definitely gonna go to, and that is gonna be around the time when she has her open heart surgery. And part of the reason why I'm going is because, one, her mom may not be able to go. with me. So I want to go and have my phone and FaceTime, so then that way her mom could be there too, in a way. And two, the voices for, I think it's Pinkie Pie from My Little Pony is going to be there. And I wanted to see if she can give like a little video message to her for her. So that's kind of what this year is. Just very, there's like a lot of stuff going on that I kind of takes a little bit more importance than rally. But like I said, if I can make it happen, it may not be in June. I may go out there myself a little bit later in the year, maybe, when I know that my niece is doing okay. You know, if all goes well, because the surgery is still up in the air. We don't know exactly when her surgery is going to be. She has to have a open heart catheter done in February, and based on how that goes is when they're going to have the surgery. But they're estimating May or June, April, May or June. So if it's going to be in June, then I'm definitely not going to be able to go. Even if the family has a rally, I probably will not be able to go because, like I said, I want to stay close in case something happens. So I will. I'll keep you posted, Jinx. Yeah, CrimeCon, I would love to go to that one year. Oh, it's in Orlando. I think one year it was up in Chicagoland area, wasn't it? I would love to go to that, and I thought it was a Chicago thing, but I guess not. Because I was actually, one of these days, I would love it if me and Jinx can go together, or, you know, whatever, and listen to some panels. Because some of those panels are very interesting. I believe one year, David Rudolph, is that his name, from the Staircase? Michael, whatchamacallit? He was there at one, and then the guy, the original FBI profiler for serial killers, was there. Like, I would love to just sit in and listen to that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, it's $299. That's a lot for a ticket. But I guess if it just depends on who's going to be there and who's going to be paneling, and what you could possibly experience. You know, the anime tickets, by the way, were $40 for 3 days. $40. But I could have paid $200 for what they call the Hokage package, which is an anime term from Naruto, like the royalty or leader package, and I could have gotten, but I was like, $40 is fine. I don't mind standing in line. I'm a lurker anyway in crowds and all that. I don't really, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I would love to go to CrimeCon one day and experience that. Orlando would be a beautiful area to do that in. That the cheapest one, not VIP access. I live 20 minutes from Orlando, so I'm gonna try to do a day pass one day. Yeah, I would totally do that too. True Crime with Sunshine. I would totally do that if I live near Orlando. and see how much a day pass is. Yeah. You should let us know how it goes. We go. All right. I'm gonna finish this chapter and then I might just call it a day. Because I've been rambling on about, or maybe I'll finish the next 2 chapters and show you these pictures. All right. All right. As the interrogators have tactics to get confessions, prosecutors have tactics to win jury trials. One of their tactics is to start trying the case to the potential jurors before trial, during the jury selection process known as the voir dire. This allows the prosecutor to start indoctrinating the juries early, thus increasing the odds of a conviction. But if early is better, then why not start even sooner than that? Why not try the case in the media, long before the would-be jurors even assemble in the courthouse? If the prosecutor can convince the general public of Dassey's guilt, and if the eventual jurors will be drawn from the general public, then the state can win its case before anyone steps foot into the courtroom. Fortunately for Dassey, there is a rule that prohibits this tactic. Wisconsin Supreme Court Rule SCR 23.6 is an ethics rule governing attorney conduct and pretrial publicity. Hey, Mose. It states a lawyer shall not make extrajudicial statement that will be dismemberment by means of public communications and will have a substantial likelihood of material prejudicing and adjudicative processing in the matter. More specifically, in a criminal case, it is an ethics violation to tell the media about the quote-unquote the existence or contents of any confession, admission, or statement given by a defendant or suspect. Now, how could he get away with it? Yet, despite this rule that seems to prohibit telling the media about the defendant's alleged confession, that's exactly what the prosecutorial team did. On March 2nd, 2006, less than 24 hours after Wiegert and Fassbender finally dragged something resembling a confession out of Dassey, Kratz was singing loudly and proudly to the media. By racing into a press conference before the ink had even dried on the interrogators' written reports. Kratz likely had only limited opportunity to read, let alone carefully study, Dassey's so-called confession. Nonetheless, Kratz rendered the following dramatic reading, complete with novelistic flair and several well-timed pauses. Now, my theory as to why Kratz likely only had a limited opportunity to read, let alone carefully study Dassey's so-called confession. I think that Ken Kratz was working with the investigators and telling them what he needed, because they often do that a lot. The interrogator, the prosecutor, state prosecutor will tell the interrogators what they need to make a conviction work. And so I think that that's what they were doing with Fassbender, and he was telling him, if you make him say this, make him say that, whatever, then we will be able to prosecute Stephen and Brendan even. You know what I'm saying? So I don't believe that Ken Kratz didn't know exactly what was being said or study it, when I think that Ken Kratz probably came up with a lot of the story to tell them to make Brendan say. Anyway, this is what he says. I don't have the high-pitched voice like he does, so you're just going to have to close your eyes and imagine that this is... we now have determined what occurred. 16-year-old Brendan Dassey, who lives next door to Stephen Avery in a trailer, returned home on the bus from school. He retrieved the mail and noticed one of the letters was for his uncle, Stephen Avery. As Brendan approached the trailer, as he actually gets several hundred feet away from the trailer, a long, long way from the trailer, Brendan starts to hear the screaming. As Brendan approaches the trailer, he hears louder screams for help, recognizing it to be a female individual, and he knocks on Stephen Avery's trailer door. Then comes the often mock part of the presser, where Kratz eerily uses the word sweat, or a variation therefore too many times. The person he knows as his uncle, who's partially dressed, who is full of sweat, opens the door and greets his 16-year-old nephew. Brendan Dassey accompanies his sweaty 43-year-old uncle down the hallway to Stephen Avery's bedroom, and there they find Teresa Halbach completely naked and shackled to the bed. Teresa is begging Brendan for her life. The evidence that we've uncovered establishes during the rape, Teresa begging for help. Brendan, under the instruction of Stephen Avery, cuts Teresa's throat, but she still doesn't die. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if you were Teresa's family, and this is how you found out a day after Brendan was arrested on what could have possibly happened to your daughter, or sister, or mother, cousin, anybody, friend? Can you imagine this being read out to everybody in your local area? I would literally feel sick to my stomach if Teresa was my sister and this is what you would be putting out there. So unprofessional. It's just so unprofessional. Of course, the evidence that we've uncovered was nothing more than the statement the interrogators fed to and then extracted from Brendan Dassey in their fourth interrogations over 48 hours. Nonetheless, Kratz went on to discuss the choking and stomach stabbing, followed by details of how they dragged the bloody mess of a body outside, where they repeatedly shot her and then burned the corpse. Never mind that the physical evidence contradicts this wild tale. How could Kratz do this? SCR 23.6 clearly prohibits disclosing the existence or contents of any confession given by a defendant or suspect. In criminal law, however, whenever there's a rule there's a prosecutor supposed to follow, there's a way around that rule, and in this case there are at least two ways. First, SCR 23.6 goes on to say that, not withstanding the prohibit on disclosing confessions to the media, a prosecutor may disclose information containing in a public record. Therefore, once a secretary or legal assistant in the prosecutor's office typed Dassey's confession into his criminal complaint and filed it, the confession became part of a public record. And, as Kratz argued when litigating Stephen Avery's case, he is allowed to disclose information contained in such a record. This simple administration act of copying and pasting appears to obliterate the rules against disclosing the contents of any confession. Some would argue, however, that it simply cannot be easy to destroy an ethics rule if it is, when it's the point of having the rule in the first place. But in this case, SCR 23.0.6 also provides Kratz with a second exception. It goes on to state that a prosecutor may, this is in quotes, may make a statement that reliable lawyer would believe is required to protect the client from the substantial likelihood of undue prejudicial effect of recent publicity, not limited by the lawyer or the lawyer's client. A statement made pursuant to this paragraph shall be limited to such information as it is necessary to mitigate the recent adverse publicity. As Kratz also argued when litigating Avery's case, Stephen Avery, family members, supporters, and other citizens advanced the theory that Avery was being set up by law enforcement officials. Therefore, Kratz's presser was meant to protect the state from such adversary publicity. But even assuming that Kratz's disclosure of Dassey's confession was truly intended to counter the conspiracy theorists, this still raises several questions. Did the conspiracy theorists really create a substantial likelihood of undue prejudice to the state? Would a reasonable lawyer believe that an over-the-top novelistic reading of Dassey's confession was required to protect the state? Wasn't the state the party that instigated the back and forth when it made its first statement to the media accusing Avery of murder? And was Kratz's dramatic rendering of Dassey's alleged confession, complete with multiple references to sweat, reasonably limited to that was necessary to mitigate the conspiracy theorists' message? Those were a lot of big words for me, huh? Even if Kratz's disclosure of the confession could somehow pass all of those tests, and in fairness, Kratz's conduct in this regard was not found to have violated any ethics rule, what about Dassey's right to a fair trial with an impartial jury? After all, it is his supposed confession, and yet all of the justifications for disclosing it to the media were based on Stephen Avery and his conspiracy theorist supporters. Dassey never made any statements to the media that would cause undue prejudice for the state to negate, and yet he has to suffer of the negative impact of Kratz's pre-trial media blitz, including the dramatic reading of the confession. But did Dassey really suffer from Kratz trying the case in the media? Surely the media must have questioned Kratz about the circumstances under which Dassey's alleged confession was obtained. Someone must have asked, for example, whether an adult was present when Dassey talked, whether it was the interrogators or Dassey who came up with the details, whether the statement was consistent with the known physical evidence, and whether the interrogators made any promises or threats to extract the confession. Someone must have asked these questions, didn't they? Unfortunately, the media showed little interest in this level of detail, and worse yet, many members of the media simply jumped to the most sensationalistic conclusion possible. In the presentation, even more dramatic, when Kratz's press conference, one newscast stated that the picture of Halbach's rape and murder was painted by a 16-year-old boy who couldn't keep his terrible secret any longer. Of course, the exact opposite was true. Wiegert and Fassbender fed the details and then painfully extracted those same facts over the course of 4 interrogations. The confession was not, as the media portrayed, a result of Dassey's unburdened his soul. Similarly, another newscast stated that the interrogators used his statements like instructions to put together pieces of a sick puzzle. Once again, the opposite was true. Wiegert and Fassbender had already put together pieces of the sick puzzle in their hands. Then, based on what they believed must have happened, they created the details to support their pre-existing theory of the crime. And the media's accounts resonated with the Wisconsin citizens who compromised Dassey's jury pool. Many were all too eager to accept and even internalize the state's theory. For example, at Kratz's March 2 press conference, he stated that Stephen Avery invites his 16-year-old nephew to sexually assault this woman, and that Dassey, under the instructions of Stephen Avery, cuts Teresa Halbach's throat. After hearing this theory, one citizen interviewed by the media said, Dassey, I think he did it to help him out. I don't think he was the master behind it, but I think he helped him out. And I just want to pause here and state that a lot of people who haven't really looked at the case feel this way. They feel exactly what Ken Kratz portrayed in this. Is that when I do talk to people who believe that Stephen is guilty, and I, oh yeah, he's guilty, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to Brendan, almost all of them say, yeah, and poor Brendan, you know, I think he was just forced to do this by Stephen. And yeah, you know, and a lot of people do show sympathy for Brendan when they think that Stephen is guilty. Because in their minds, you know, Stephen made them do this. So it worked in the overall picture of things, even to this day. A lot of people who feel that Stephen's guilty also associate this thought with Brendan. The citizens expressed this conclusion with great certainty, as if he had personally investigated the facts and formulated an independent and informed opinion. The more important explanation, of course, is that he simply heard Kratz's account that Avery invited and instructed Dassey to commit the crime, and then internalized the story as if it was his own original thought. This, of course, is exactly what prosecutors want. If the would-be jurors are convinced of guilt before stepping into the courthouse, the battle is won before it's even fought. This example nicely illustrates the dangers of a prosecutor disclosing a defendant's alleged confession to the media. Of course, SCR 23.6 initially portrays to prohibit such disclosure to protect defendants from these dangers. But by the end of the lengthy, multi-part, exception-riddled rule, there are so many holes through which a prosecutor can crawl that rule, like many other attorneys' ethic rules, may as well not even exist. But despite the sweaty pro-state spin that Kratz put on the confession, to the delight of the media and for the entertainment of the news-consuming public, the prosecutor team knew it had problems with its single, unsupported, even contradicted piece of evidence. Earlier chapters demonstrate that during the interrogation, even Wiegert and Fassbender had their doubts. On several occasions, they told Dassey that the yarn he was spinning just didn't make any sense, and in some parts was even impossible. But Kratz and his cohorts were about to catch a big break. Enter defense attorney Len Kaczynski. All right. So this next chapter has 3 pages, so if you bear with me. Chapter 22, Spit, Shine the Evidence, page 109. Once I'm done with this chapter, I'll show you guys the photos that they have. It's stuff that you've probably seen, but still, I want to show you guys. So, Chapter 22, Spit, Shining the Evidence. As the last chapter explained, Ken Kratz's pretrial media tour went a long way towards winning the case before it even started. But the state's real break came when Len Kaczynski was appointed as Dassey's defense lawyer. When defending a criminal case, there is a general rule that selecting a defense strategy is the lawyer's decision, not the client's. And this makes sense as the lawyer is supposedly trained to make that choice. However, there are at least 2 exceptions to this rule. First, any strategy that involves the client pleading guilty requires the client's approval. The reason is that by law, only a client can make this particular decision. And second, even when the attorney's defense strategy does not involve the client pleading to some charges, the attorney cannot decide on a strategy until he or she has adequately investigated the case and met with the client. Despite these 2 limitations, Kaczynski decided, before reviewing the case, and even before talking with his client, that his defense strategy was for Dassey to plead guilty and hopefully get a reduced sentence. Dassey's appellant lawyers argued. Kaczynski's earliest remarks to the media foreshadowed this plan. On the same day he was appointed, for instance, he told the press that Brendan was morally and legally responsible. Kaczynski made this remark, which he later concluded was an admission of Brendan's guilt, before he had even met with his client or discussed his plea idea with him. And we all know, if you guys look back to the post-conviction that we covered on Len Kaczynski, that he maybe met with Brendan a handful of times, maybe around 5 hours in total, or maybe a little bit more. Not a lot, considering that this is a minor child up for murder. You would think that you would spend a lot more time with your client, but what do I know, right? Telling the world that a defendant is morally and legally responsible accomplishes several things. However, none of them are good for the defendant. Most notably, this public concession of guilt corroborated Kratz's media bliss, and Kaczynski's own media tour, like Kratz, was ongoing. And as another example, Kaczynski told the press that the interrogators were not putting words in Dassey's mouth, and that Dassey was remorseful, and there was no defense. This was all before... Bye, Roxana. This was all before he met him, by the way. So how would he know? It didn't matter to Kaczynski that he eventually met with his client, Dassey, insisted he was innocent and had falsely confessed, much like the government investigators who ignored any piece of evidence that contradicted their theory of this case. Sorry, I lost track. Much like the government interrogators who ignored any piece of evidence that contradicted their theory of this case, Kaczynski was firmly locked into his defense strategy of Dassey pleading guilty and cooperating with the state. And by carrying out this strategy, Kaczynski was polished up the state's only piece of evidence, the confession. Kaczynski then did something that probably unprecedented in history of criminal law. He hired a private investigator, Michael O'Kelly, to interrogate Dassey again, which we discussed yesterday or the day before during a live when Richard Leo was being cross-examined by Steve Drizzen. Steve Drizzen, have you ever heard of a defense attorney hiring somebody to interrogate their own client? And Dr. Richard Leo said, no, I have not. Isn't that crazy? Never happened before. Hopefully never happens again. Kaczynski's goal was to obtain a confession from his own client that the state can use to corroborate and therefore strengthen Dassey's earlier confession to Uyghur and Fassbender. This would presumably please the prosecutor, who then hopefully would recommend a reduced sentence. Then Dassey eventually entered his plea deal. O'Kelly began interrogating Dassey the same way the government's interrogators did. He refused to accept any claims of innocence. When Brendan told O'Kelly that he was innocent and explained that on March 1st he had been merely guessing and agreed to whatever the police said, O'Kelly refused to listen. O'Kelly then employed Uyghur and Fassbender's tactic of offering to help in exchange for Dassey telling the truth. However, much like the government's interrogators, O'Kelly equated the truth with whatever confirmed his pre-existing beliefs. O'Kelly promised that if Brendan confessed again, then I will help you through this process and you will not be doing life in prison. If Brendan denied involvement, on the other hand, O'Kelly told him that his defense team would do nothing to help him escape a frightening fate. If you lie to me, guess what I have to do? I have to stand up, put everything away, and leave, because that means that you want to go to prison for the rest of your life. Under O'Kelly's watchful eye, he gradually wrote out a full confession. That O'Kelly, like I said, also, I'd stop right here for a second. ODOG actually FOIA'd that whole thing. Like, again, you can go to ODOG's channel. You can go back on my channel and see our open panel discussion on all of this, which also has a link to ODOG's original video. I suggest people watch it, because then you'll see O'Kelly did more than just watchful eye. He actually guided Brendan to write certain things. He actually did a lot more than just sat there and like I mean, it was pretty sickening to watch, in my opinion. Almost as worse than the interrogators, because in my opinion, your defense attorney's there to help you plead to what you want to plead to. So Brendan is proclaiming his innocence. And the only help that he's getting is from people who are basically telling him, you're lying still. We don't believe you. Plead guilty. And to be manipulated like that, it's beyond messed up what happened. By this point, then, things are really starting to look for the state. Sure, it initially had serious problems with the muddled garbage confession that Wiegert and Fassbender eventually pulled out of Dassey, but Kratz was able to negate those problems through his press conferences. And Kaczynski helped the state immensely by launching his own media tour. Then Kaczynski got Dassey to confess to O'Kelly, and he promptly delivered the confession to Wiegert and Fassbender on a platter. But then Kaczynski, Wiegert, and Fassbender, all whom wanted to spit shine Dassey's original confession, went too far for their own good. First, Kaczynski offered the government a chance to interrogate Dassey again. This would be Dassey's 5th interrogation by Wiegert and Fassbender, and at least his 7th overall, including the one by O'Kelly. And second, the two government agents couldn't leave well enough alone. They couldn't resist the chance to have one more shot at the kid. Dassey, now charged with several crimes, including murder, was sitting in jail. So Wiegert and Fassbender interrogated him in custody without Kaczynski present, but with his permission. Their 5th interrogation was in many ways a repeat of their first 4. Fassbender led with the same disingenuous rapport building. I heard you're going to watch a movie last night. What movie did you watch? Then he and Wiegert employed the same wordplay about truth and honesty. You got to be honest with us here, Brendan. This is your opportunity to be honest with us. Admittedly, the investigators did add a new twist to their routine for this 5th go-around. However, they have stolen this new tactic from O'Kelly, who provided to be their superior in the interrogation room, who proved. Wiegert and Fassbender convinced Dassey that they were doing him a favor by grilling him for a 5th time. I look at it this way, we're giving you another opportunity. We didn't need to come back here. If we sat here and we feel like you're not being honest with us, we could just leave. By comparison, O'Kelly had threatened Dassey that he would stand up, put everything away, and leave. The two government interrogators then reverted to their tiresome tactic, including their seemingly endless claims that they already knew what happened. Come on, Brendan. What's he telling her at this time? We know there's some talking going on, okay? We know that. They also retold their most common lie, that Dassey could help himself by talking. You need to help yourself, and that's by telling the truth. And even though they are now interrogating Dassey in jail, Fassbender's generosity with the beverages continue. Can I get you a soda or water or something? You sure? You sure I can't get you something, huh? By then, the dynamic duo finally got to the actual interrogation. Things immediately blew up in their face. Dassey's confession only became more garbled, confused, contradictory, and nonsensical. Putting lipstick on a pig might leave you with a slightly more attractive pig, but when you put too much lipstick on a pig, this was, after all, their 5th interrogation. You just get a really messy, uglier pig. For example, in Dassey's newest version of the rape and murder, he didn't go to the Averys with a piece of mail. Rather, Avery called him and invited him over. And no longer did Avery stab Halbach in the bedroom. Now he and Dassey stabbed her, and when they did so in the garage. And then after the stabbing, Avery shot Halbach 5 times, not 10. Most significantly, instead of seeing Halbach's car in Avery's garage or even parked outside the trailer, Dassey now admitted he never saw it at all that day. It was disastrous, so the interrogators demanded he revert to the old version of the story. You can't say you didn't see the truck or know where the truck was, because she had to be in the truck after she was bleeding, okay? That's just the way it is. Dassey complied, complied and agreed with them that the Hallbach's truck was in the back into the garage. Nearly every imaginable detail of the crime had changed in this new interrogation of the confession. Before Dassey hashed Hallbach's throat in the bedroom, now he didn't slash it at all. Before Dassey and Avery both carried Hallbach out in the bedroom, and Avery then went back for his rifle, this time, Avery grabbed his rifle, single-handedly carried it and Hallbach to the garage, while Dassey trailed behind him and carried only her clothing. Wiegert soon came to regret ever starting this fifth interrogation. You told us last time you helped carry her out of the bedroom. Remember that? Okay, what's the truth? Then Dassey said that his newest version was the truth. Fassbender had jumped in. So you want us to believe that he carried a body and a gun at the same time out into the garage? Ain't that nearly impossible to do unless you gave him the gun and then you helped him with the body? This wasn't the first time and wouldn't be the last time that the interrogators used the word impossible to describe Dassey's confession. You'd think by that point, pausing, you'd think by that point they would be like, this is bullshit. Maybe this didn't happen at all. But no, they keep going with it. And now, to this day, they swear that this is the truth, by the way. That everything that he said was the truth. Are you kidding me? And now, even the details about Hallbach were in flux. Dassey previously reported that she had pubic hair, but having forgotten what he said, was now reporting that she did not. Similarity, he previously described Hallbach's breasts, but now admits he never saw her breasts, and further, never touched them. Even Fassbender realized this was impossible. You had sex with her, but you didn't touch her breasts? This fifth interrogation devolved into pure chaos, and as a final example, when interrogators previously asked Dassey what Avery had done to her head, one of his guesses was that he cut her hair. This resonated with Wiegert and Fassbender. They had probably seen movies where the perpetrator took some of the victim's hair as a trophy of sorts. Hoping to find the hair something that would actually corroborate rather than contradict Dassey's story, they raised the subject again. Fassbender. The first time we talked to you, or the second time, you talked about cutting her hair off. Where did the hair go? Did you cut her hair off? Brendan, yeah. Fassbender, where did that happen? Brendan, in the bedroom. Fassbender, where did you cut her hair off with? Brendan, the knife. The knife that they couldn't find, by the way. They never found a knife. Fassbender, the knife you guys found in the garage? It's impossible. You took her out to the garage and that's where you got the knife. Explain how that could be. Did she cut her hair off? Brendan, no. Fassbender, then why did you just tell us you did, Brendan? Brendan, I don't know. Yeah, the knife that supposedly they cut the hair and stabbed her and cut her throat that they put in the RAV4 when they were done under the seat, they never found that knife. They never found the murder weapon. The only weapon that they had was the .22 that Stephen had in his trailer. But the .22 bullet didn't match the forensics of the body. Crazy, right? So you have a murder, you don't even have a real body. You have bones of something that could be genetically linked to Teresa, could be, but not exactly, and you don't have a weapon. It's crazy that this case went as it went. I can't even. Wiegert and Fassbender like baseball apologies. So, to put this in terms they could appreciate, this line of questioning was another swing and miss. In fact, the two had witnessed the government's case against Dassey go from bad, after their fourth interrogation, to good, thanks to Kraut's media tour, to great, thanks to Kaczynski's media tour and unique defense strategy. But now they had gone straight back to bad. In fact, thanks to their outrageous greed in conducting this fifth interrogation, they may have even hit a new low. Disastrous. However, Wiegert and Fassbender hatched a scheme to snatch victory from the jaws of justice. They devised a plan to reverse their downward trend and put an amazing gloss on their sole piece of evidence. This plan, assuming they can get a now imprisoned child to fall for it, would overcome all of their previous coercion, all of the confessions inconsistencies, and even all of the contradictory physical evidence. They just had to convince Dassey to make one simple phone call, and that's the phone call that we all are aware of with Barb. But we're going to stop here and let me show you guys the pictures that they have in this chapter. Let me change the position of my camera. Boop! Hello, you see the roof or the ceiling. And then camera. Ta-da! All right. Here we go. So this is the book. And this is the picture. This is the famous or infamous, it says. So the white, but the caption reads, Photo 1, Avery Road, the famous or infamous Avery Road sign as set against a bleak winter sky in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Teresa's remains were found nearby on the Avery property, and despite numerous holes in the government's case, the jury convicted Stephen Avery of the murder. However, a great deal of evidence, including testimony and physical evidence from Avery's trial, along with new evidence developed since his conviction, indicates a third party or parties may have committed the crime and successfully framed Avery. Brendan Dassey was convicted in a separate trial as party to Avery's crime. However, Dassey's confession was based entirely on his own statements. There was no physical evidence, eyewitness, or accusation that linked him to the murder. So that's the famous Avery Road dead end sign. Next picture is the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department front. And this says, Photo 2, Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. At the time of Teresa's Paulback's disappearance, the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department was on the defense. Stephen Avery had filed a civil lawsuit for the department's role in his wrongful conviction in 1980s, and his lawyers were in the process of disposing several of the department's agents. Yet, despite what appeared to be a conflict of interest due to the civil lawsuit, the department played a key role in developing the evidence against Avery for Halbach's murder. The Sheriff's Department was also the scene of Wiegert and Fassbender's fateful March 1st, 2006 interrogation of Brendan Dassey. When driving Dassey from the school to the department, Wiegert told him, "Who knows, maybe we'll get you back as soon as we can." Instead, Dassey was interrogated and arrested. And then here's this person. Lawrence T. White is his name. Photo 3. Lawrence T. White, PhD, social psychologist, and Beloit College professor Lawrence White evaluated the multiple police interrogations of Brendan Dassey. In 2007, he wrote, "The police repeatedly pressured Brendan to provide them with details that conformed to their theory of the crime. There are many reasons to question the trustworthiness and voluntariness of Brendan Dassey's so-called confession." Several years later, as shown in episode 3 of Making a Murderer, Mr. White explained, "When they say to Brendan, 'Be honest,' that they sort of mean is, don't tell us that, tell us something else, something that fits their theory of the crime." So, social psychologist. how many people, this is what part that drives me crazy. You see my hands? How many professionals do we need to say that what happened to Brendan was a travesty and that the confession was false? Like, how many professionals does it take for anybody, Governor Evers, Josh Call, anybody, to take this seriously and say, you're right? It's mind-blowing to me. Like, mind-blowing. Here's something that we all recognize. That's the Manitowoc County Courthouse. It's where we had our rallies normally. Photo 4, Manitowoc County Courthouse. Brendan Dassey was tried at the Manitowoc County Courthouse, pictured above with the Manitowoc County Jail in the background. After Dassey was convicted, Jerome L. Fox, the circuit court judge who presided over the trial, denied his post-conviction motions. Judge Fox found that Dassey had freely and voluntarily confessed, therefore rendering his confession admissible at trial. The judge also found that Dassey's trial attorneys were not ineffective for failing to call on expert witnesses like Lawrence White to educate the jury about coercive interrogation tactics and their link to false confessions. It's so crazy! Okay. Everything about this is just insane. Oh, it drives me crazy. Okay. This Supreme Court of Wisconsin building. Photo 5. The Supreme Court of Wisconsin. Brendan's lawyers appealed the trial court's rulings to the state appellate court, arguing, in part, that Dassey's confession was coerced and its use at trial violated his constitutional rights. The court dispensed with the issue that 2 short paragraphs include reaching the inexplicable conclusion that Uyghur and Fassbender never made any threats or promises of leniency. Not surprisingly, the Supreme Court of Wisconsin, located in the state capitol building in Madison, pictured above, refused to even hear Dassey's case. Steve Drizin, one of Dassey's appellant lawyers, explained it this way. It would be very difficult for Brendan to get relief in Wisconsin's state court system. This case is too much of a heater. Is that the state capitol building then? Kind of looks like it. I don't know. This is Madison. Located in the state capitol building in Madison. So yeah, that's where we have our Madison rallies. So that's where I would be going back to if I had another Madison. All right, last picture. Photo 6. United States District Court. Brendan Dassey's case is one of the relatively few state cases to reach the federal court system. Dassey's appellant lawyers filed a petition for writ of habeas corpus, and the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Wisconsin, located in the federal building in Milwaukee, pictured above, granted the right. The court ordered the state to release Dassey or retrial him without benefit of his so-called confession. Judge William E. Duffin wrote that Uyghur and Fassbender's repeat false promises, then considered in conjunction with all reliable factors, rendered Dassey's confession involuntary. The state appealed, and the 3-judge panel of the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with Duffin. However, a 7-judge panel of the court, which 2 judges not participating later disagreed. In a 3-4 decision, the judge panel of the court, with 2 judges not participating, later disagree. Oh wait, I just read that over. In a 3-4 decision, the flip-flopping 7th Circuit reversed Duffin and ordered him to dismiss Dassey's petition. Dassey remains in custody, with the Supreme Court of the United States being his last hope, which we all know now in 2023 that the Supreme Court denied, the Supreme Court of the United States denied Brendan's petition of writ of habeas, and now as it stands, it is admissible in court, which we all thoroughly disagree with. Obviously, I'm trying to find something to bookmark. I think I'm going to use this, which we all thoroughly disagree with, because obviously it was not admissible in our opinion, because they coerced the poor kid into saying what they needed him to say to ensure a conviction. So yeah, so we're gonna stop here for the day. I've been reading for almost 2 hours, reading for probably only an hour, ranted for another hour. When next Monday we'll start on page 121, chapter 23, A Simple Plan. So we're halfway through the book too. Like I said, it's not a big book. The chapters are very small. Everyone should go out and buy this book, support the author, read it yourself, and yeah. So I'm gonna end this, and I hope everybody has a good day. And yeah, write to Brendan. Tell him you believe in his innocence. Tell him that we all hear, we all see him. It means the world to him to hear that. And I hope to see everyone participating in, I think this next Saturday is Popcorn Saturday, and then we've got, yeah, we've got other things coming up. The chicken thing, and then the streaming. If you're not already streaming Making a Murderer, make sure you start streaming it. I did pick the last weekend out of the month for everyone to stream together, but you can start streaming now, because we're trying to get Making a Murderer back to the top 10 recommended. So, hey, thanks, True Crime with Sunshine. Thank you for being here, everybody, and I hope everybody has a fantastic day.
We saw things that I think have never been seen before in a court of law. I can't think of another case where the defense attorney and his investigator plotted to pressure their client to plead guilty to a case that in which he was expressing his innocence.
That tape was somewhat disturbing, I think.
It was extraordinarily disturbing, and Michael O'Kelly is a seasoned investigator, and I believe what he did to Brendan Dassey traumatized him.